this point, I think it's safe to say that we all know Night City, a cybernetic playground of chaos, greed, and rebellion. But what about the rest of the world? While you're running gigs and dodging Adam Smasher, entire nations were falling apart, alliances were being forged, and wars were rewriting the map. From Dubai's rising fall to the devastating conflict between Iran and Iraq, the cyberpunk universe is a dystopia that spans far beyond Night City's neon lights. Buckle up, tunes. This is the story of what really happened to the rest of the world in Cyberpunk 2077. The decline of North America began in the 2020s as the Fourth Corporate War from 2021 to 2023 engulfed the world. This conflict, driven by Militech and Arasaka, left countless cities across the US as battlegrounds. The war culminated in a nuclear detonation in Night City in the year 2023, wiping out Arasaka Tower and leaving much of California's west coast in ruins and irradiated. The fallout from this conflict accelerated the fragmentation of the United States, and by 2024, states like Texas, Northern California, and parts of the Midwest declared independence, forming the Free States movement. The federal government struggled to maintain power as regions like Florida and Oregon followed suit. The situation worsened during the Second US Civil War in the 2040s. Battles between the federal government and rogue free states, many backed by corporations, turned the Midwest into a chaotic war zone. And by 2049, the war ended with the formation of the new United States of America, or NUSA for short, centered on the East Coast. The NUSA brought stability to regions like New York, Washington, DC, and Boston. But the free states, particularly California and Texas, refused to join. The country was now a patchwork of competing governments and lawless zones. Oh yeah, and I kind of forgot to mention this, but the NUSA kind of took over Canada, so a little bit of detail I forgot. South America suffered from corporate exploitation and environmental disaster. In 2032, the Amazon War erupted between Brazil and Colombia as both nations fought for control of the rainforest's dwindling resources. Corporations like Petrochem fueled the conflict, extracting oil and timber while the nations tore themselves apart. And by the 2050s, Brazil had become a corporate state, with its government reduced to nothing more than a puppet regime. Chile and Argentina, though less directly affected, faced economic collapse as corporate influence spread across the continent. The collapse of Europe began with the disintegration of the European Union in 2028. Economic turmoil, rising nationalism, and resource shortages caused fractures among member states. Germany, once a leader of the EU, became overrun by corporate factions, with cities like Berlin and Munich turning into sprawling hubs for biotech and cybernetics. France suffered a similar fate, with Paris becoming a battleground between nationalist militias and corporate-backed paramilitary forces by the 2030s. By the 2040s, both France and Germany had devolved into regions controlled by megacorporations rather than centralized governments. In Eastern Europe, countries like Poland and Ukraine became hotspots for corporate wars as Arasaka and Militech vied for control over vital natural resources, and by the 2050s, much of the region was abandoned, its population displaced by endless skirmishes and environmental degradation. In contrast, smaller alliances like Benelux between Belgium, Netherlands, Luxembourg, and the Nordic Alliance between Denmark, Norway, Sweden, and Finland managed to maintain some sort of stability. These nations pooled resources and fortified their borders to resist corporate domination. However, even they struggled as climate change and resource shortages ravaged the continent. Africa, rich in natural resources, became a prime target for corporate exploitation. And by the 2020s, nations like South Africa and Nigeria, that's where I'm from, were embroiled in conflict over control of vital industries. Corporations such as Petrochem and Biotechnica established city-states in resource-rich areas, effectively sidelining national government. In North Africa, countries like Egypt and Morocco faced devastating economic collapse as global trade routes collapsed. Rising sea levels submerged parts of coastal regions, displacing millions and creating widespread unrest. By the 2060s, much of the continent was divided into corporate zones, abandoned wastelands, or territories controlled by tiny militias. Asia experienced some of the most dramatic conflicts in the Cyberpunk timeline. China, already a rising power, faced rebellion from Hong Kong in 2040. Backed by Arasaka, Hong Kong sought independence but was brutally suppressed by 2042. The crackdown solidified China's authoritarian grip, making it one of the most powerful nations in the cyberpunk world. In the Middle East, the long-standing rivalry between Iran and Iraq reignited in 2025, fueled by dwindling oil reserves. By 2028, the conflict had left both nations in ruins. The corporations moved in, exploiting the destruction to seize control of the region's resources. The Gulf states, particularly Dubai, thrived briefly as corporate hub in the 2030s. However, rising sea levels and environmental disasters led to Dubai's abandonment by 2045, turning the once glittering city into nothing more than a ghost town. In Southeast Asia, Indonesia invaded Papua New Guinea in 2065, seeking control of its natural resources. The conflict escalated as corporations armed both sides, turning the region into a brutal proxy war. By the 2070s, Papua New Guinea was a wasteland of corporate mining operations and displaced populations. In Oceania, climate change devastated smaller Pacific island nations, many of which were abandoned as sea levels rose. These islands were quickly claimed by corporations for strategic purposes or left to sink into the ocean. Australia, however, took a different approach, and by the 2060s, the country had transformed into a heavily militarized state, fortifying its borders to protect its resources. Corporations dominated its economy, making it a hub for cybernetics and advanced technology. Antarctica, untouched by human settlement in the real world, became a secretive testing ground in the cyberpunk timeline. By the 2070s, rumors of corporate research facilities hidden beneath the ice began to circulate. These facilities were said to conduct experiments in bioweapons, artificial intelligence, and cybernetics far from the oversight of regulators or activists. By the time of Cyberpunk 2077, the world outside Night City is a dystopian mosaic of corporate zones, failed states, and environmental collapse. Governments are mere shadows of their former selves, controlled or replaced entirely by corporations. From the free states of North America to the shattered remnants of Eastern Europe, every corner of the globe tells a story of greed, conflict, and survival. The world of Cyberpunk 2077 is a vast one, filled with untold stories. Which region's collapse fascinates you the most? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this exploration of the global cyberpunk lore, hit the like button, subscribe for more deep dives, and turn on notifications so you never miss a video. The neon glow of Night City may steal the spotlight, but the rest of the world is just as captivated and just as doomed. See ya.